The emptiness struck me first. Where my solid oak desk once stood, there was nothing but clean carpet marks. My diplomas and client appreciation plaques that had lined the walls, gone. The custom bookshelf I'd installed with my own hands had vanished, along with 5 years of carefully collected reference materials. I shifted my 3-month-old daughter Elena against my shoulder, her tiny body warm against the sudden chill I felt. There, in the trash can by what used to be my doorway, lay my nameplate. Paige Lambert, Senior Investment Advisor, peeked out from beneath crumpled sandwich wrappers and empty coffee cups. My daughter made a small noise, and I adjusted her blanket. 12 weeks. I'd been gone just 12 weeks to bring her into the world. "Paige, welcome back!" Dean's voice boomed behind me with manufactured enthusiasm. He stood with Lynette from HR hovering beside him, both wearing expressions that didn't match their tones. "You're looking well." "My office is gone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Where are my things?" Dean cleared his throat. "Yes, well, we've had some structural modifications while you've been away. The board voted on departmental changes last month." Lynette stepped forward, clipboard clutched against her chest. "We've had to make some adjustments to team compositions. Your responsibilities have been redistributed among the team for efficiency purposes." The truth hit me as Elena squirmed against my shoulder. While I was bringing new life into the world, they had systematically erased mine here. I'd been the only female senior advisor in the investment division for 3 years. My client portfolio generated nearly 40% of our annual revenue. Last quarter, before my leave, I'd broken the company record for new client acquisition. "Redistributed," I repeated, the word tasting bitter, "and my personal belongings?" "In storage," Lynette offered quickly. "We can have them delivered to your home. Or," she hesitated, exchanging glances with Dean, "we can discuss transitioning you to another department, perhaps something less demanding for a new mother." Elena's tiny hand grasped at my collar, and I inhaled deeply. I thought back to that morning 8 months ago, the same day I discovered I was pregnant. I had accidentally overheard Troy and Philip, 2 junior advisors, talking in the stairwell when they thought they were alone. "Once she has that kid, she'll be useless here," Troy had said. "Sleep-deprived and distracted. Garrett already thinks her clients should be redistributed," Philip had added. "Says a woman with a newborn can't give them the attention they deserve. Once she pops out that kid, she'll be too exhausted to fight back." They never knew I was there, 3 steps above them, hand frozen on the railing. Before I continue sharing what happened next, let me take a moment to connect with you. If you're finding this story resonates with you in any way, please hit that like button. Your support means everything, and I promise this story takes turns you won't expect. Subscribe to follow my journey, and leave a comment sharing if you've ever faced workplace challenges after a major life event. Now, back to what happened that day in my former office. My name is Paige Lambert. Before having Elena, I worked 70-hour weeks building a client base most advisors would sell their souls for. I was methodical, detail-oriented, and ruthlessly organized. Some colleagues called me the librarian because I documented everything, but that meticulousness had earned me the top spot in client retention 3 years running. What they didn't know was that growing up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs had taught me to never take security for granted. Mom always told me, "Paige, this world will try to convince you that you can be a mother or successful, but never both. Your job is to prove them wrong." When I first joined the firm, I was one of 17 new advisors. Within 2 years, only 4 remained, and I ranked at the top. When I was promoted to senior advisor, Dean had clapped me on the back and said, "Who would have thought the quiet girl would outlast them all?" I'd built my reputation carefully. While others took extended lunches and talked sports with Garrett, I stayed at my desk researching investment trends and making calls. My clients trusted me because I never overpromised and always delivered. Many were women who'd inherited wealth or built businesses. Clients the male advisors often overlooked or patronized. The promotion to the corner office 3 years ago had come with resistance. Troy and Philip had joined around that time, both from prestigious business schools, both with connections to board members, both clearly expecting to leapfrog me. When I got the promotion instead, the tension became palpable. "We need to discuss your transition plan," Dean said now, pulling me back to the present. Given your new circumstances, I studied him carefully. Dean had been my mentor once. Back when I was still a novelty, he could take credit for discovering. His enthusiasm had waned proportionally with my success. "Where are Troy and Philip?" I asked. "They've taken over your top client accounts," Lynette answered, then immediately looked like she regretted the candor. "Temporarily, of course. for continuity during your absence. I see. I adjusted Elena again. And has anyone informed my clients of this change? Dean shifted his weight. We sent out standard notifications. Most have been understanding about the transition. Most? He cleared his throat. There have been some questions. But change is always an adjustment period. The elevator doors opened, and Garrett stepped out, halting when he saw me. At 57, our CEO maintained the appearance of someone 10 years younger, with carefully maintained silver hair and tailored suits. He recovered quickly, striding toward us with practiced confidence. Paige, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you until next week. My leave ended yesterday, I replied, bouncing Elena gently as she began to fuss. I emailed last week to confirm my return date. Garrett's smile tightened. Must have missed that. How's motherhood treating you? Wonderfully. Elena is thriving. I looked pointedly at the empty space that was once my office. Unlike my career, apparently. Garrett chuckled, though his eyes remained cold. Now, nobody's saying your career isn't important. We simply made necessary adjustments while you were focused on more. Domestic matters, I repeated. You mean exercising my legally protected right to maternity leave while recovering from bringing a human into the world? Lynette stepped forward, clearly sensing danger. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in the conference room? Paige, would you like some tea? Water? What I'd like, I said quietly, is an explanation of how 12 weeks of leave resulted in the complete elimination of my position. The three exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Garrett sighed. Look, Paige, business doesn't stop for personal milestones. The market shifted. Client needs evolved. Troy and Philip showed initiative by stepping up to cover your absence, and they've formed strong relationships with your clients. The board, I interrupted. When did the board meet to discuss restructuring my department? 6 weeks ago, Dean answered. It was an emergency session. 6 weeks after I'd given birth, when I was still healing, barely sleeping, learning to breastfeed, when they thought I was too overwhelmed to notice or respond. I see, I said, my voice controlled despite the anger building inside me. And was anyone going to inform me before I showed up today? We were planning to call you this week, Lynette said quickly, to discuss transition options. We have several paths forward that might better accommodate your new lifestyle. My new lifestyle, I echoed. You mean being a mother? Being a parent changes priorities, Garrett said with false sympathy. We understand that. The demands of this position, the travel, the evening client meetings, the constant availability, those don't align well with having an infant at home. Elena began to cry in earnest now, as if sensing the tension crackling in the air. I soothed her automatically, my mind racing through implications and options. The law prohibits discrimination against new mothers, I said finally. Garrett's smile turned cold. Nobody's discriminating, Paige. This is a business decision based on client needs and company direction. We're offering you alternative positions within the organization, aren't we? That's hardly discrimination. I looked at the three of them, Garrett with his calculated charm, Dean avoiding my eyes, Lynette nervously tapping her pen against her clipboard, and understood with perfect clarity what had happened. They had planned this from the moment I announced my pregnancy. They had waited until I was at my most vulnerable, sleep-deprived, and adjusting to motherhood, to dismantle everything I'd built. They expected tears, perhaps a resignation letter. Maybe they thought I'd gratefully accept some diminished role with flexible hours and half the pay. What they didn't know, I hadn't just been preparing for motherhood during those 9 months. I need to feed my daughter, I said finally. Is there somewhere private I can go? Lynette looked relieved at the change of topic. Yes, of course. We can use the small conference room. It's empty right now. Thank you. And after that, I'd like to collect my personal belongings. Of course, Dean said quickly. I'll have someone bring them up from storage. As I followed Lynette down the hallway, I caught sight of Troy watching from his office. My former client's files spread across his desk, a smug smile playing at his lips when he saw me with the baby. Philip emerged from what had clearly become his new office, surprise registering when he saw me. Paige, you're back, with your baby, he said, unable to keep the disapproval from his voice. Just briefly, I replied with a calmness I didn't feel. I'm here to collect some things. His relief was palpable. Well, great to see you. We should catch up sometime. Definitely, I said, knowing we wouldn't. We have plenty to discuss. As I settled into the conference room chair to feed Elena, my phone vibrated with a message. I checked it while Lynette excused herself, promising to return with my belongings. The message was from my former assistant, Meredith. They're all in the executive meeting. Operation Sunrise is ready when you are. I smiled down at my daughter as she nursed. They think mommy's been changing diapers and watching baby shows for 12 weeks, I whispered to her. They have no idea what's coming. I closed my eyes, remembering the day I discovered I was pregnant. After overhearing Troy and Philip in the stairwell, I hadn't confronted them. Instead, I'd gone back to my office, closed the door, and made 3 phone calls. The first was to my college roommate Isla, now a labor attorney, specializing in pregnancy discrimination. The second was to my client Valerie, who owned the building across the street. The third was to Meredith, the assistant I shared with 2 other advisors. I need every email, every memo, every performance review from the last 3 years, I'd told Meredith, and I need you to document everything that happens while I'm gone. Now, 8 months later, with Elena peacefully nursing, I scrolled through my messages. Meredith had been meticulous, sending daily updates disguised as baby advice emails. Every decision made about my clients, every meeting where my name was mentioned, every comment about my maternity leave, all documented with dates and participants. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Lynette entered with a cardboard box. Here are your personal items, she said, placing it on the table. Is there anything else you need? I glanced at the box. It contained my framed degree, a plant that had somehow survived, and a few desk trinkets. None of my files, none of my research notebooks. My client files, I asked? My research journals? The contact lists I maintained? Lynette shifted uncomfortably. Those are company property, Paige. All client information belongs to the firm. I understand. And my personal notes? The investment strategy templates I developed? I'll have to check on those, she said, not meeting my eyes. I nodded, knowing exactly where they were, divided between Troy and Philip's offices, being mined for insights they'd claim as their own. The templates I'd spent weekends perfecting were probably already rebranded with their names. When you're finished, Garrett would like to meet with you to discuss next steps, Lynette added. He has some ideas for roles that might be appropriate for your situation. Elena had finished nursing. I carefully buttoned my blouse and lifted her to my shoulder to burp her. I appreciate that, I said. Would you mind holding her for a moment? I need to get something from my bag. Lynette looked panicked at the suggestion, but social conditioning won out over her discomfort. She awkwardly accepted Elena, holding her as though she might shatter. Support her head, I instructed, hiding my amusement as I reached for my bag. I retrieved my phone and snapped a photo of the box containing my belongings. Evidence, I thought silently. Then I pulled out a thick manila envelope. What's that? Lynette asked, relief washing over her face as I took Elena back. Just some paperwork I need to review with Garrett, I said. Shall we? We walked to Garrett's corner office, the one I'd been on track to earn before my pregnancy. Through the glass walls, I could see Troy and Philip already seated at the small conference table inside, looking smug and proprietary. Garrett stood as we entered, gesturing to a chair. Paige, thank you for joining us. Troy and Philip are here to help smooth the transition. How considerate, I said, settling into the chair with Elena against my chest. Troy winced slightly at the sight of my baby. Maybe we should have this conversation when you can focus fully, without distractions. Elena isn't a distraction, I replied calmly, and I'm quite capable of multitasking. I did manage a 40-client portfolio while growing a human. After all, Philip forced a laugh. Always the overachiever, Paige. But seriously, parenthood changes priorities. We've had to step up in your absence, and the clients have responded positively to the continuity we provide. Continuity, I repeated. Interesting choice of word for taking over my client relationships while I was on protected leave. Garrett cleared his throat. No one's taking over anything permanently. We're discussing redistribution of responsibilities to better serve the clients and accommodate your new circumstances. My circumstances, I said, stroking Elena's head. You keep using euphemisms. Let's be direct. You think I can't perform my job at the same level because I'm a mother now. It's not personal, Paige, Troy interjected. It's business. Clients need advisors who are available nights, weekends, whenever markets shift, with a baby. Did any of you actually ask my clients what they wanted? I interrupted. Or did you just assume they'd prefer male advisors without family obligations? Uncomfortable glances were exchanged. Garrett leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Paige, we have a compromise to offer. We've created a new position, Parent-Friendly Client Relations Coordinator. Reduced hours, minimal travel, focus on maintaining existing relationships rather than building new ones. It's perfect for someone in your position. And the compensation? I asked. Troy studied his hands. Philip suddenly found the view fascinating. Garrett cleared his throat again. There would be an adjustment, naturally, given the reduced hours and responsibilities. Base salary with minimal commission structure, but excellent benefits. Full health care for you and your daughter. I nodded slowly, bouncing Elena gently as she began to fuss. So, to clarify, you've eliminated my position, redistributed my clients, and now offer me a role with less responsibility, reduced hours I didn't request, and significantly lower compensation. It's a generous accommodation, Garrett insisted. Many companies wouldn't even go this far. Many companies follow federal law protecting new mothers from exactly this type of discrimination. I countered. Garrett's expression hardened. No one's discriminating against you, Paige. Business needs changed. We're making you an offer that balances company requirements with your new reality as a mother. I studied each face around the table. Garrett, confident in his power and certain of my limited options. Troy and Philip, barely containing their triumph. Lynette, uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge the status quo. I'd like to review the specifics of this new position, I said finally. Do you have a formal offer letter? Relief washed over their faces. Garrett nodded to Lynette, who produced a folder. All the details are here, she said, sliding it across the table. Take your time reviewing it. I opened the folder with one hand, scanning the document inside while continuing to soothe Elena. The compensation was worse than I'd anticipated, a 60% reduction from my previous salary, with minimal benefits and a probationary period as though I were a new hire. I see, I said, closing the folder. And what happens if I decline this generous offer? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Then we would process your separation from the company, Garrett said carefully. Standard severance, of course, which would be 2 weeks, as per company policy for voluntary separations. I nodded, letting silence fill the room until it became uncomfortable. Then I reached for the manila envelope I'd brought. Before I respond to your offer, I'd like to share some information with you. I slid out several documents, passing copies to each person. These are transcripts from recorded conversations between various members of management discussing my role and maternity leave. Troy's face paled as he scanned the first page. Philip swallowed hard. Garrett's expression remained neutral, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the papers. Where did you get these? Garrett demanded. Do you recognize your voice on page 3, discussing how to ease the mommy out without triggering a lawsuit? I asked instead of answering. Or Troy, your comments on page 5 about how pregnancy is the perfect opportunity to redistribute her client base. Lynette was scanning the documents with increasing alarm. This doesn't look good. It gets worse, I said, pulling out another set of papers. These are statements from 15 of my clients, documenting how they were told I had chosen to step back from my career to focus on family and that I recommended Troy or Philip as their new advisors. Interesting, since I was never consulted about any client reassignments. This is absurd, Garrett blustered, but his confidence was cracking. Those clients are company assets. We have every right to reassign them as needed for business purposes. True, I agreed. But fraudulently representing my intentions to those clients is another matter entirely, as is the systematic dismantling of a female employee's career during protected maternity leave. Elena began to cry in earnest. I stood, pacing gently while patting her back. The men looked increasingly uncomfortable with the crying baby, which suited me perfectly. What exactly are you implying? Garrett demanded. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You orchestrated the elimination of my position while I was on protected leave. You made deliberate misrepresentations to my clients. You're now offering me a position with substantially reduced compensation and responsibility as your only option. I paused, letting Elena's cries fill the silence. Classic pregnancy discrimination, textbook retaliation, with a dash of fraud thrown in. You're threatening us, Philip said, voice tight. I'm informing you, I corrected. There's a difference. Garrett pushed the papers away. What do you want, Paige? More money in the new position? An extra week of severance? Let's be reasonable here. I almost laughed at his definition of reasonable. Instead, I reached into the envelope again and removed a final document, sliding it across the table. What's this? Garrett asked, not touching it. A courtesy, I replied. I've filed a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, They've agreed to fast-track the investigation given the substantial evidence. This is your copy. The blood drained from Garrett's face. You've gone outside the company? Without even trying to resolve this internally? Like you resolved my employment situation internally? Without my knowledge or input? I countered. But the EEOC complaint is just the beginning. I sat back down, managing to quiet Elena with gentle bouncing. The room was completely silent now, all eyes on me. Valerie Banks, I said softly. Remember her? My client who manages the Hudson Valley Retirement Fund? She's very interested in how female employees are treated here, as is Jonathan Reed at State Investment Board, and Patricia Moore, who handles the Teachers' Pension Fund. All clients I brought to this firm, all managing billions in investments, all deeply committed to ethical corporate practices. Philip looked like he might be ill. You contacted our clients about an internal matter? No, I said. They contacted me when they received notifications that I was stepping back. They were concerned about the discrepancy between what they were told and what they know of my character. Garrett tried to regain control of the situation. This is completely unprofessional. Whatever grievances you have should be handled through proper channels. I agree, I said, rising again as Elena fussed. That's why I've followed every legal protocol to the letter. My attorney has been quite thorough. Your attorney, Lynette repeated faintly. I nodded, swaying gently with Elena. You didn't think I spent my entire maternity leave just changing diapers, did you? I also had plenty of time to document, plan, and consult experts while feeding my daughter at 3 a.m. I gathered my papers, tucking them back into the envelope. I'll leave you all to discuss. I believe you have some decisions to make. Where are you going? Garrett demanded. We're not finished here. I am, I said simply. For now. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. to hear your response. I suggest you use the time wisely to consider your options. They're more limited than you might think. As I turned to leave, Troy finally found his voice. You can't just walk away from this. I paused at the door, looking back at the 4 stunned faces. I'm not walking away. I'm just giving you time to realize what you've done and what's coming next. I stepped into the hallway where Meredith waited, exactly as planned. She beamed at Elena and then at me. Conference room C is ready, she whispered. They're all waiting. Who's all waiting? Philip called from behind me, having followed me to the door. I smiled, not bothering to answer as I walked away with Meredith, leaving them to wonder exactly what forces I had marshaled against them during my 12 weeks away. Conference room C was the largest meeting space in the building, typically reserved for client presentations and board meetings. As Meredith opened the door for me, I stepped into a room filled with familiar faces, 15 of my most significant clients, sitting around the massive table. Valerie Banks, the investment director for the Hudson Valley Retirement Fund, rose immediately. There she is, she announced, her voice warm as she approached to peek at Elena. And this must be the little one we've been hearing about. Thank you all for coming, I said, genuinely moved by their presence. I appreciate your time on such short notice. Jonathan Reed, who managed the State Investment Board's portfolio, nodded seriously. When we received those strange notices about your career change, we had questions. Your email invitation clarified a lot. Patricia Moore, representing the Teachers' Pension Fund, didn't bother with pleasantries. So they really did it. They dismantled your entire operation while you were out having your baby. They did, I confirmed, taking the seat Meredith had pulled out for me. They redistributed my clients, removed my office, and are now offering me a dramatically reduced role at less than half my previous compensation. Murmurs of disapproval spread around the table. These weren't just clients. Many had become friends over years of working together. They trusted me with billions in investments, retirement funds that affected thousands of people's lives. I wanted to meet with you directly, I continued, because you deserve to know what's happening. The firm has told you I chose to step back from my career. That was never true. We figured as much, said Gregory, who managed investments for a hospital network. You've never done anything halfway in the 5 years I've known you. I shifted Elena to my other arm, and Patricia immediately offered to hold her. I handed my daughter over, watching as this formidable woman who controlled billions in assets melted into baby talk. While I was pregnant, I explained, I discovered plans to push me out during my leave. Instead of confronting them immediately, I made preparations. I nodded to Meredith, who distributed folders to everyone present. These packets contain 3 things: documentation of what's happened, a summary of the legal actions I'm pursuing, and most importantly, an invitation. The room grew quiet as they opened their folders. Lambert Advisors. Jonathan read aloud from the elegant prospectus inside. You're starting your own firm? Yes, I said simply. Across the street, in fact. Valerie owns the building and has offered favorable lease terms for the entire 16th floor. Valerie smiled, still focused on reviewing the documents. The views are better than from this building anyway. This is more than just a new business announcement, I continued. It's an opportunity for each of you to decide where you want your investments managed. My departure from this firm will be finalized this week, one way or another. You're under no obligation to follow me. Your contracts are with the firm, not with me personally. Gregory leaned forward. Unless we execute these transfer request forms included in your packet. Precisely, I nodded. Those forms legally authorize the transfer of your accounts to Lambert Advisors, effective immediately upon submission. And you already have all regulatory approvals? Patricia asked, professional even while making faces at my daughter. Everything was finalized last week. I confirmed. My registration as an independent advisor was approved. Compliance requirements met. Office space secured. My team is ready to ensure a seamless transition. Your team? Jonathan raised an eyebrow. The door opened again, and Meredith ushered in 5 people. My carefully selected team, recruited over the past 3 months. Meet the founding members of Lambert Advisors. Zhao from Quantitative Analysis, Darren from Client Services, Nina from Compliance, James from Operations, and of course, Meredith, who will be our office manager. Recognition dawned on several faces. All had worked at my current firm until recently. All had resigned in the past week. You've been planning this for some time, Valerie observed, impressed. Since the day I found out I was pregnant and overheard my colleagues plotting to use my maternity leave against me, I acknowledged. But what began as a contingency plan became necessary when I returned to find my position eliminated. I circulated the room, speaking individually with each client, while Elena was happily passed between several who were also parents. These weren't just business relationships. These were people who'd trusted me through market volatility, who'd celebrated my pregnancy with genuine joy. After 30 minutes of conversation, Jonathan stood, holding up his signed transfer form. I've seen enough. My board has authorized me to maintain our relationship with Paige, regardless of where she works. We're transferring our accounts. One by one, each client followed suit. 15 transfer forms, representing over $3.8 billion in assets, were collected by Meredith and placed in a leather portfolio. You understand this represents over 60% of your former firm's managed assets, Gregory pointed out. This will devastate them. I understand completely, I replied, but my responsibility has always been to provide the best service to you and your beneficiaries, not to protect a company that discriminated against me. The meeting concluded with handshakes and arrangements for follow-up discussions. As the clients filtered out, Valerie stayed behind. Your timing is impeccable, she noted. The merger they've been pursuing with Atlantic Capital? What about it? I asked, taking Elena back from Patricia as she departed. I sit on Atlantic's board, Valerie said with a slight smile. The vote is tomorrow. They've been banking on this merger to fund their expansion plans. When we learn about this mass client exodus and the legal complaints, she didn't need to finish the thought. The merger would collapse. As the room emptied, Meredith approached with her tablet. Garrett's called an emergency executive meeting. Troy and Philip are panic texting their contacts at the board. They know something's happening, but not exactly what. Perfect timing, I said. Let's proceed with phase 2. We walked deliberately through the office, Elena sleeping peacefully against my shoulder. Heads turned as we passed. Word was spreading. The sight of me confidently striding through with Meredith, directly toward the executive conference room, created exactly the tension I'd anticipated. I could see them through the glass walls. Garrett, Troy, Philip, Lynette, and 4 board members, engaged in heated discussion. Meredith knocked and opened the door without waiting for a response. Garrett stopped mid-sentence. This is a private meeting. I apologize for interrupting, I said, not sounding apologetic at all. But I believe you'll want this information immediately. I nodded to Meredith, who placed the leather portfolio on the table. What is this? Demanded Howard, the board chairman. Transfer requests, I said calmly. 15 of your largest clients, representing approximately $8 billion in managed assets, are moving their accounts effective immediately. The room erupted in chaos. Troy grabbed the portfolio, flipping frantically through the forms. Philip went pale. Garrett slammed his hand on the table. This is corporate sabotage, he shouted. This is client choice? I corrected. Each has independently decided where they want their investments managed. I simply provided them with the information and documentation they needed to make that choice. You solicited our clients, Philip accused. That violates your employment agreement. I've reviewed Miss Lambert's agreement thoroughly, came a voice from the doorway. Isla, my attorney and former roommate, stepped into the room. She's violated no contractual obligations. Clients have the right to know when their advisor has been removed from their accounts under false pretenses. Howard turned to Garrett. What is she talking about? What false pretenses? They told my clients I had chosen to step back from my career to focus on motherhood, I explained. That was never true. I was pushed out while on protected leave, my office dismantled, my position eliminated, all in violation of federal law. Howard's expression darkened as he turned to Garrett. Is this accurate? Garrett attempted damage control. This is a gross mischaracterization of standard business restructuring. We have recorded conversations, I interrupted, emails, witness statements, and now 15 major clients who can testify to what they were told about my departure. The board members exchanged alarmed glances. One of them, Barbara, whom I'd always respected, turned to me. Where are these clients going exactly? To Lambert Advisors, I replied. My new firm, which opens officially tomorrow, across the street. Troy looked like he might lunge across the table. You planned this all along. No, I said, my voice steady. You planned to eliminate me all along. I simply prepared for that possibility. There's a difference. Howard held up his hand to silence Garrett, who was still protesting. Miss Lambert, what exactly do you want? Nothing from this company, I answered honestly. My clients have made their decisions. My team is in place. My business is ready. I'm here as a professional courtesy to inform you directly of the significant asset transfer that's about to impact your books. And the legal complaints? Lynette asked quietly. Those will proceed regardless. Pregnancy discrimination and retaliation are serious violations that affect more women than just me. Those cases need to be pursued to their conclusion. Elena stirred against my shoulder, making tiny noises that signaled she would wake soon. I bounced gently, soothing her back to sleep. I should go, I said. My daughter needs to be fed and I have a business to run. I turned to leave but paused at the door. Oh, and you should know, Atlantic Capital's board votes on your merger tomorrow. Valerie sends her regards. The blood drained from Garrett's face. Valerie Banks is one of the clients leaving? She's also on Atlantic's board, I confirmed. Interesting coincidence. I left them in stunned silence, walking out with Isla and Meredith flanking me. As the elevator doors closed behind us, Isla finally allowed herself to smile. That was the most professionally delivered destruction I've ever witnessed, she said. It's not destruction, I corrected her. It's consequences. The next morning, I stood in my new office across the street, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as chaos unfolded in my former workplace. Elena was happily cooing in the bassinet I'd placed near my desk. The office nursery was still being finished. Meredith entered with a tablet displaying news headlines, Atlantic Capital withdraws from merger talks, and Mass Client Exodus Rocks Investment Firm. The board called an emergency session, she reported. Garrett, Troy, and Philip have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I nodded, feeling not triumph but vindication. And our clients? All transitions proceeding smoothly. The teams handling everything beautifully. I lifted Elena from her bassinet, holding her up to see the view of the city. See that, little one? That's what happens when people underestimate a mother. The phone rang, another client calling to inquire about transferring their account. As I prepared to take the call, I caught sight of Garrett exiting the building across the street, cardboard box in hand, security escort beside him. I hadn't just returned from maternity leave with unexpected papers. I'd returned with a complete solution, my own company, my loyal clients, my dedicated team. They thought 12 weeks of maternity leave had made me vulnerable. Instead, it had given me time to build something better. Lambert Advisors. I answered the phone, watching as Garrett looked up toward my window. Our eyes met briefly across the street. I smiled and turned away. How may I help secure your financial future today? If you've ever faced workplace discrimination or been underestimated because of your personal choices, I hope this story reminds you of your power to rewrite the rules. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong, it's building something better right next door. If this resonated with you, please share your own stories of professional resilience in the comments. Subscribe to follow more journeys of determination. And remember, the most powerful response to underestimation is exceptional success. Thank you for listening to my story.